Welcome to this podcast for Brighton School of Business and Management students studying for the BTEC Level 5 courses. For this unit, you'll need to satisfy the criteria exactly as laid down in the assignment brief and as described here, but you should, wherever possible, use examples from your own organisation and business sector, as well as showing evidence of having studied the unit topics in depth and breadth by referring, where appropriate, to relevant models, theories and established best practices. To enhance your understanding of these assignment issues, we also strongly advise that you discuss them with operational and senior managers and personnel, HR and training specialists within your own organisation. Each section should be approximately 400 words, although this is flexible up to around 500 words, not including graphics or illustrations, so you'll need to keep your responses focused on what is being specifically asked for in each section. Section 1. Here you need to give a brief summary describing what workforce planning is and why it is necessary to adopt an action planning approach to ensure that events are sufficiently staffed, and then give an example of how workforce planning would be applied to a particular event. On bullet point 2, you need to reflect on and discuss the impact of the range of factors that can influence workforce planning, such as high or low local unemployment levels, competitor activity and pay rates, and so on. Here you need to summarise how staff should be recruited for an event or for permanent employment, in effect describing best practice in this and giving examples of best practice procedures from your own organisation or other organisations whose procedures are recognised as being effective. Section 2. For this, you'll need to discuss factors and issues such as the culture of the organisation, the organisational structure, the levels of motivation, and the makeup of teams in terms of age and experience. The best way to respond to bullet point 2 is to focus ideally on your own organisation if it is involved in events, or if it is not, then select an organisation you can research and select a small range of lines of authority, for example individual to line manager or team to team. Here, ideally using the same organisation as above, you need to summarise the roles and responsibilities of the main groups of employees, such as waiting staff, kitchen staff, facilities staff, managers, specialists, and so on. Here you can draw on your response to the first bullet point in this section, but focus on why it is important to have good, positive working relationships between different teams, between individuals and line manager, team member and others in the team, individuals of any status with clients, guest, subcontracting staff, etc. Finally, you need to list and explain the importance of the range of factors to be considered, such as relevant experience, qualified, trained and experienced staff, appropriate equipment, relevant legal status, and an understanding of the requirements of the event. Section 3. Just as asked, explain why this is important, referring to established motivation and morale models and theories. Here you need to select a range of established, commonly used training techniques used in the industry, such as on-job training by colleagues, in-house workshops and off-site providers, and evaluate, that is, give your opinion on the value and the effectiveness of each one. Following on from the bullet point above, explain with examples the benefits for the individual and for the organisation itself. Finally, you need to explain separately what appraisal processes are meant to achieve and what management development schemes are meant to achieve, and also comment on the reasons as to why these are often not effective. Section 4. Here you need to describe the range of regulations and their purpose, for example relating to pay rates, working environment, variation of contract, termination of contract, and so on. Just as asked, identify and describe 2 commonly used, proven to be effective employment practices, for example offering flexible working hours, and explain why these are effective. For bullet point 3, you need to go into detail about how termination of employment is governed by employment law, for example how a laid down process must provably have been followed before an individual can be dismissed. Finally, you need to identify the main features, focusing on areas such as employment rights of the individual, discrimination, pay, hours and so on, and briefly describe the purpose of each. Don't forget that you also need to add a list of sources of information and references showing any books, websites, articles, case studies, reports, internal documents and people interviewed that you drew on in order to complete your assignment. The sources of information and references are not included in your word count. Here is a list of websites you should find useful when completing this assignment. And if you need any further help or assistance with this assignment, please contact your tutor.